What's up, YouTubers? Just on the bike path out here in Arizona, getting ready for my trip back to Latin America. I'm going to head back on out to Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Just want to make a short little video on how to live cheap in Latin America if you have to. Like if your budget's only $500 or $600 or $1,000. I get asked a lot of time, all the time, can you still live on that? Yeah. I just want to give you a few examples of how you can do it and what I've done in the past and what people I know do. All over Mexico, you can rent hotels for like $8 to $12. Sometimes it's a shared bathroom, but a lot of times you get your own private bathroom. And in that situation, they're pretty nice hotels. They're not super nice, but they usually have hot water, they have internet, and they have a TV usually. And for $10 a night, you know, that's $300 a month if you want to do that. But here's a thing that you don't see too many gringos doing in Latin America, and that's renting a room all over Latin America, but especially Mexico. You have a lot of places where you can rent rooms for like $25, $30 to $50 to $100 a month. Now you're probably thinking a lot of these places are crappy. Well, they're actually not that crappy. And a lot of times you can go for $250, $300 like in Mexico City and share rent in some really, really nice places. And what's cool about that is you get like a kind of an instant community or family. Like for $100 a month, you can have roommates, or you may not like that, but you get a room, you get a, you know, you get the bathroom, you get the Wi-Fi, you get a place to cook. In Mexico, I generally don't cook that much, but you know, if you want to do that, you can do that. Another cool thing about that is you don't have to get like utilities in your own name. You don't have to deal with that kind of nonsense. And you can just go in there, and most of the time you don't really have to pay a deposit. That's another thing. Like if you get an apartment for $200 or $300, what gets a lot of gringos is they pay a first, last, and deposit, which can be up to $1,000 or more US dollars. Most people don't realize they can negotiate that out. And that's going to be up to each gringo. But if you're in a high tourist area with a lot of tourists, that's going to be harder to do. But if you get a little bit off the gringo tourist trail, that's a lot easier to do. Just as an example, you can go into Mazatlan and go into Old Mazatlan. There's a lot of gringos. Or you can go 3 or 4 blocks in certain directions, and there's not a lot of gringos. And you can get apartments that are not furnished for $200, $250 a month, if you know you want to go that route. So the rest of your money you're going to need, you know, and usually that includes all your utilities. So for $100 to $200 or $300, you know, you can have an apartment or rent a room for that range. And these rooms are all over. You see them for rent all over. It's just a matter of knocking on doors and asking around. I don't know if you've seen, I think it's Jerry Brown's Travel. He shows at least one that I remember where a guy was living on $350 or $360 a month. And then there's another guy I know who did that. I don't know how he ended up living on getting $500 or $600 from Social Security, but that's all they got. So he was living pretty fine and actually liking it down there, and using his savings to do some little local businesses there. But you see these videos from time to time, people renting apartments for a couple $100 or renting a room for $100 or $200 or $300 in a really nice home in a really nice community. So if you're willing to live with other people, that's how you can bring your costs down. And usually the utilities are included in that. Now, if you rent an apartment for $200 or $300, you're gonna have to pay for that, like the water, the electricity, Wi-Fi, things like that. Usually stuff like that can be $50 or $100 a month. Like you can get high-speed internet in Mexico for $50, or you can get not as great internet speeds for $20 or $30. And usually you get a package for $30 to $50 for TV internet if you want that. I don't care for it. I just get the internet. So now, like if you're spending $100 or a couple $100 or $300 a month for your living accommodations, depending on how disciplined you are, you can live on like $100 a month buying your food in the markets. That's what I usually do. But I usually spend more than that. I usually spend $300 to $400, and usually $150 for rent. I usually get 2 bedroom apartments for that. Now these are not furnished. You have to buy your own furnishings. Well, the last one I had was furnished for $150, but they're not always. If you're willing to look around, you can find furnished apartments or unfurnished for pretty cheap, usually $200 to $300. You know, in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, all those places. So that's just a matter of negotiating. Then the rest you're going to spend on entertainment and food. That's where it's really hard to reckon how much you're going to pay for that, because everyone's a little different. I'm pretty quiet. I work at home. My business is usually mostly online, so I like quiet places, and I don't really party a lot. But if you don't eat out a lot, if you don't drink out a lot, you can live for $3, $9 a day, $3 a meal at a restaurant. That's, let's say, $10 a day. That's $300 a month. So you can live for $500 or $600 if you rent a hotel, or if you rent a room, or less than that. Now, personally, when I'm in Guatemala, I like to cook a lot. In Mexico, not so much. And another thing is, in some of these gringo areas, they have tourist places, hotels you can rent by the month. And so that's pretty good too, and there's no deposits on that. Like, just for example, in Old Mazatlan, you can get a place right on the beach for like $400 a month, and that's usually $300 to $400 depending on if you get a view or not, things like that. And then usually it has a kitchen in it, and those are the ones that kind of the higher end. You can get cheaper than that, and you can get quite a bit more if you want to stay at like a really expensive hotel. But I'm talking about the old part. It's the same in Acapulco. It's the same all over. If you want the coastal living, I don't really care for the coastal living as much. Anyways, just an example, like once you get into Central America, you can get hotels for like $4 or $5 a night. That's including a bathroom. And these are in really small towns. These are not in the big city. In the small towns, it's quite a bit quieter. So that's another thing I usually do, is I just rent a place like in a small community. Some of these small places don't have very good internet, so you can get I call it an internet stick, but it's not really that, and you can get pretty good internet there. I just need internet for my some of the business things I do. So that's another alternative. And everything I said about Latin America is true about Southeast Asia. Like if you go to, especially Thailand, Philippines, not as much, but you can rent hotels by the month for like $150 to $200. You get a bathroom, sometimes, usually, typically for $200 or less. You get a bathroom, you get a refrigerator, place to put a blender if you want to buy a blender, make smoothies and stuff like that. But anyways, Cambodia, Thailand, Philippines have similar things, but just in Thailand you have a lot more options and selections because there's just so much construction going there. You can always snag a place that cheap. Just also too, for $200 to $300 in Thailand, you can usually rent an apartment that has 2 or 3 swimming pools, just depending on what level of the building you're at, and it usually includes kind of a small gym, not too sophisticated, but kind of a small gym. And it's these places are all over the place. That's why I'm not specifically naming. There's no secret. They're just everywhere. It's just a matter of knocking on doors and asking people and asking other expats. So whether you want to live in Southeast Asia or Latin America, it's a little different depending where you're at. But food is, generally speaking, way cheaper in Asia, and it typically doesn't pay you to make your own food unless you have some specialties you like. But in Latin America, I like to cook my food sometimes. Anyways, just a video how you can live that cheap if you want to. I know that kind of pisses off some people, but I'm just, you really can live that cheap if you want. And the cool thing about that is if you're making a couple $1,000 a month, you can put away $1,000 a month in your savings and start another business, which is what I like to do, and compound and stuff like that. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, tell me what you think, leave a comment. Thanks.